In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. But amidst the fires of battle, what is there to consume, and from whence does sustenance arrive? The Imperium of mankind exists in a state of perpetual survival, expending colossal resources to maintain its infinite military machine. By resources, I speak not merely of ore, throne gelt, and other material assets. The most coveted resource is humanity itself. And the human flock in this era is comprised of far more than the Adeptus Astartes. There is a place in this galaxy for the manufacturum laborer, the serf, and the humble worker, upon whose broken backs rests the supply chain of the entire boundless Imperium. How do these subjects live? What trials do they endure daily? What defines the specifics of existence on one world versus another, and for what purpose do they consume the dead? Agri worlds, the peasant is the foundation of any crusade, the provider of sustenance. The soldier requires nourishment. Thus, upon agricultural planets, billions of serfs toil without cease. It is not difficult to surmise the complexity of feeding a state of such magnitude. Although the High Lords possess no precise census, estimates suggest a population of some 10 quadrillion souls. Void barges, heavy with produce, course unceasingly from agri-worlds to the other spheres of humanity. These agricultural worlds are guarded by mighty bastions and orbital defense networks. In terms of fortification, they are second only to fortress worlds. This is a strategic necessity, for should even a single agri-world perish in some forgotten corner of the galaxy, an entire front may collapse from starvation. To visualize an agri-world, citizen, picture a planet carpeted entirely in farms and fields, so vast that their horizons are never broken. Rising amidst them are multi-level hive cities, concentrating the populace and the administration. Agriculture here is not conducted at random. The Adeptus Administratum, the central authority of the Imperium, calculates all factors: climate, soil, vegetables and beasts that will best thrive on a specific sphere. Agri-worlds operate in strict rotation. Every process is fine-tuned to the microsecond. They may cultivate purely edible insects, serve as a planetary slaughterhouse, or consist entirely of oceans, serving as a home for submariners and fishermen. Each agri-world, besides being ruled by a planetary governor, is divided into peasant communities where a local overseer coordinates the tithe. These are not the small hamlets of ancient history, but colossal settlements. Visualize a vast city of fishermen, where a single fisherman answers with his very head for the streamlined process of supplying mackerel and herring. But realize this: whether a peasant is occupied growing gigantic fungi in cryocaverns, wheat on solar fields, or plankton in laboratories, such a subject is not the primitive farmer with rake and spade you might imagine. In the 41st millennium, the peasant is a servant of technology. From childhood, they are trained to operate the most modern machinery and devices to facilitate their labor. It is logical that such scales of production cannot be sustained by manual effort alone. On worlds under the significant influence of the tech priests of the Adeptus Mechanicus, fields may be ploughed entirely by servitors wielding electro-scythes. Servitors, robotized humans who have been stripped of the will to decide anything independently. In essence, the peasant consumes what he produces. It occurs that an entire planet is allocated specifically for the production of delicacies for the imperial nobility. Yet those who cultivate these luxuries shall eat far more modestly. Typically, the serf subsists on grain crops, or, if the emperor is benevolent, the meat of the grox, the most common livestock in the Imperium, or the ambul, an insectoid beast which is also consumed. In the hive cities, however, the primary ration consists of bricks of corpse starch. I shall elaborate on this substance henceforth. After long years of incredibly arduous labor, peasants either become hardened survivors or they simply cease to exist. Therefore, they are excellent candidates for recruitment into the ranks of the Astra Militarum, the Imperial Guard. Such a soldier can withstand any hardship, However, agri-worlds are rarely utilized to staff regiments, for the population density upon them is low and the harvest must not stop. There would be no one left to work. The peasantry is a deeply pious flock. Consider the average labourer of the fields. At any omen, be it fair or foul, or simply before a meal or upon entering his hab block, he makes the sign of the Aquila and offers prayers to the emperor. Where the presence of the tech priests of the cult Mechanicus is strong, peasants, in addition to the emperor, worship the machine god, the Omnissiah. Since the peasant of this millennium is intimate with technology, it is not surprising that the majority turn to the Mechanicus creed. Even on planets devoid of a single tech priest, they pray to the Omnissiah whenever a machine fails and offer thanks when the motive force is restored. Small settlements in the remote corners of planets may invent their own idols. Superstitious fishermen may worship a sea deity. Naturally, this is heresy. The Inquisition is ever vigilant for such cults should they be discovered. Yet such sects are harmless errors compared to the heretics of the archenemy. Regrettably, agri-worlds are listed among those planets that frequently fall to chaos, simply because the inhabitants are few, making it far easier to conceal vile mutations. There are fewer neighbours to report to the Holy Ordos, or perhaps the neighbours will join the heretic. After which, a small rural town may turn completely to heresy. Chaos cults, aside from the abduction of citizens, insurrections, and other misdeeds, may open a path for the invasion of demonic armies, which will not hesitate to devastate the planet. Let us summarize. The peasant of the 41st millennium is a resilient subject, most often religious and technically skilled. What lies ahead? Most likely, one born into a peasant family will endure a life identical to their parents, toiling from dawn to dusk and thanking the emperor for another day lived. This is a hard but relatively calm life, as much as is possible in the Warhammer universe. Though there is only war, the simple worker will notice this only if his planet is devoured by the Tyranids or another calamity strikes. The most probable fate of a peasant is that he will never leave his planet, nay, not even his native farm or settlement. A worker of the fields or a butcher may never encounter orcs, nor learn of the Tau. The Eldari will remain creatures of myth to him. Such a man cares not for politics. The price of a peaceful life is monotony, yet there are exceptions. Suppose a peasant manages to depart his slaughterhouse and travel. What awaits him? There is a probability of a journey to the front lines in the ranks of the Imperial Guard. Regiment founding occurs by direct order of the planetary governor. There are no options for refusal. This applies to any citizen of the Imperium, and farmers, though drafted less frequently, are no exception. Former peasants may bid farewell to their families and beloved machines forever. Service in the Astra Militarum is for life. Although variations exist in different units, typically the only way to conclude service is death. Even a veteran who has paid his debt to the Emperor will likely not return home. Upon demobilization, his new home will be whatever peaceful planet of the Imperium the regiment has garrisoned. Are the prospects of the peasant dismal? Nay, citizen, to die or toil in the name of the Emperor is the highest calling. And it is not only the ranks of the Astra Militarum that a peasant may enter. It is not rare for those especially talented in handling technology and faithful to the Omnissiah to be recruited into the cult Mechanicus. Those furiously faithful to the Emperor may be called into the ranks of the ecclesiarchy. The possibility is not excluded for a peasant to rise to a local management position, proving his efficiency and being noticed by the Adeptus Administratum. After such an ascent, the path to administrative positions anywhere in the galaxy is open. But even having climbed from the mud, begun to eat and dress better, it does not mean his heavy service has ended. The Imperium demands maximum exertion from every human, regardless of station. Hive worlds are the antithesis of the agricultural sphere. These are the most densely populated locations in the Imperium, built with such density that humanity lives atop one another. Structurally, these are not cities but synthetic anthills. The reasons for constructing these titanic human hives were simple. Architects solved the problems of overpopulation, pollution, and civil unrest by simply building new levels of cities, layer upon layer, until the spires pierced the heavens. Usually, hive cities are constructed within mountains to form a natural protective sarcophagus of thick armored stone. Additionally, such settlements are shielded by void generators. To storm a hive is the work of decades. A prime example is the Hive world Armageddon. There, Commissar Yarrick stood against the Orc warlord Gazkul Mag-Uruk Thraka. Despite the fact that most settlements of Armageddon are open to the skies, decades of war proved insufficient for the Orc forces to destroy the planet. Many regions of the world remain as verdant as they were before. The Orcs broke their teeth upon Armageddon and still wage bloody wars for it. The elite of the Hive worlds dwell in the spires, and it is obvious that the closer to the peak one resides, the more opulent their existence. At the same time, all industry, heavy manual labor, pollution, disease, and poverty are the constant companions of the lower layers. The overpopulated lower levels are massive ghettos, breeding grounds for violent criminal gangs. For visualization, it is just to cite the Hive world Necromunda, ruled by criminal clans with centuries of history. Beneath the lower levels lies the Underhive. The population of these depths is not even considered human. Down there, beneath the hives, is a true sewer where the enforcers never tread. Life exists amidst mountains of waste and filth. There is no system of governance, a vast number of mutants, various abominations, and an excellent foundation for the birth of chaos cults. Some flee the law into these vile places, but usually such a rash act ends in the death of the fugitive. Why are such worlds necessary if they only destroy nature and pollute? Since the population of hive worlds is counted in the billions or even trillions, they are the primary sources for replenishing the Navis Imperialis and the Astra Militarum. Unlike agrarian planets, there is no shortage of humanity here. Thus, recruits can be shoveled from the hives endlessly, throwing ever more soldiers into the meat grinder of war. Ordinary Imperial guardsmen do not participate in more than one conflict. If a soldier survives, he will war for decades for a single planet or somewhere on the frontiers of dark space. He is not a space marine who witnesses many worlds. Most likely a guardsman will see no one else except, say, orcs. His entire life will be dedicated to war with orcs, and he will be saturated with hatred for greenskins or tyrannids, as fate decrees. Average workers of hive planets who have not yet been tithed to the army live in repugnant conditions. Dark masses of people situated in terrible confinement are entirely dependent on the city's infrastructure. Any riot or disorder can lead to a failure in power and transport, resulting in catastrophe. The population of a hive city is perpetually dissatisfied and will rise up for any reason, be it a new tax or a lack of food. Therefore, the Adeptus Arbites and local enforcers in such places are endowed with extraordinary powers, holding the populace in an iron fist. A riot destroys cities and entire planets no less effectively than an external threat. Thus, the war against it is waged in earnest. There is a saying in the Imperium that any hive world is 3 missed meals away from anarchy. There are ample examples where catastrophic unrest flared up even in stable hives. Carol Sim in the Jericho Reach fell after a civil war that began as a minor disagreement between local factions and ended in an exchange of nuclear strikes. Argos was a prosperous planet, but is now forcibly isolated by the Imperium and stands on the brink of death after separatism, influenced by the Tau. On Medusa 4, isolated by a warp storm, 2 entire hive cities fell to the influence of chaos. The authorities noticed the strengthening of the cults too late, and the planetary defense forces could not stop them. When the storm cleared and the Ultramarines arrived to restore order, the majority of the planet was already lost. Even the mighty Astartes could not quell such a massive rebellion, after which the Inquisition decreed the ultimate sanction, exterminatus. Although for an ordinary citizen exterminatus is instant death, there is an opinion that dying during a riot is not so terrible. Anything is preferable to such a life. A simple person born in a hive city is assigned to some arduous task, for example, toiling in a manufactorum until exhaustion or until conscription. If a resident is not mobilized, there is little chance he will ever leave his city or even his level. Hive dwellers never see the white light of a star unless they dwell at the very summit. Acquiring new possessions is difficult, so everything is inherited from elders or the deceased. Air, water and food here are worth their weight in gold. Nothing vanishes without a trace. Everything undergoes reprocessing. Most likely, someone has already consumed this fluid. One cannot bring oneself to call it water, and it has passed another filtration. And the bar that satisfies a citizen's hunger is made of corpse starch. Yes, citizen, for such a colossal population to survive, one must resort to recycling the dead. On Necromunda there is the Guild of Corpses, the Mercator Pallidus. Entire quarters in a hive city may be occupied by corpse-grinding factories. Corpse starch is a vital trade resource, and every influential merchant dreams of monopolizing this market. But nutritional bricks can be made not only from starch. Sometimes they are fashioned from insects, cartilage, or any other organic matter. Everything that possesses nutritional value is utilized. Life in the void, the Imperial fleet. Do not make the error, citizen, of believing that all of his subjects tread upon solid ground. There are those who are born, live and perish without ever knowing the sky or the soil. I speak of the void-born and the denizens of the Imperial Navy. The void ships of the Imperium are not mere vessels. They are flying cities, kilometers in length, housing populations in the tens of thousands. Life within the adamantium belly of a cruiser or battleship is a distinct existence. The void-born are often marked by their pallid skin, strange gait adapted to fluctuating gravity, and eyes accustomed to the gloom of the lower decks. To the planet-bound, they are objects of superstition, often considered ill-omened. How does one arrive here? Many are born to the crew, serfs of the chapter or the navy, inheriting their station. Others are taken. When a fleet docks at a hive world or a civilized station, press gangs roam the docks and slums. They seize the strong, the unwary and the criminal, dragging them in chains to serve the emperor among the stars. Labor here is brutal. The macro cannons that rain death upon our foes are not automated. They are loaded by gangs of thousands of men, hauling shells the size of hab blocks with chains and raw muscle. A misstep means being crushed. A radiation leak means a slow, agonizing death. And then there is the warp. To travel between stars, the ship must tear a hole in reality and enter the Imperium. Only the Geller field protects the crew from the madness outside. Every sailor knows the low hum of the generator is the only thing standing between their soul and the predation of demons. Nightmares plague their sleep. Whispers echo in the bulkheads. To serve in the void is to live on the very edge of damnation, held back only by faith and steel. In the Imperium, nothing is wasted. It would seem that in hive worlds, people perform the function of robots, laboring at factories, gazing at a black sky and choking on corpse bars. But there are planets where people are not like robots, but are quite literally robots, the cult Mechanicus. On Agri worlds, people can at least rarely influence their fate. In hive worlds, it is almost impossible. But on forge worlds, there are no maybes. Life there is predetermined from inception to cessation. The Adeptus Mechanicus rules supreme. Long ago, the Emperor of Mankind created an alliance between Terra and Mars, the capital of the Mechanicus, after which the tech priests pledged to supply the Imperium with technologies, titans, tanks, and much more. The life of an ordinary laborer on forge worlds is strongly similar to the existence of any other factory worker in a hive city, with the exception of religion and prospects. Ordinary residents worship the Omnissiah, not the Emperor, and their existence is fully calculated. Tech priests analyze every human in advance and decide where to assign a sub-adult. the most physically developed, to the Skitari, the warriors of the Omnissiah. The flesh of the rest goes to toil in production until death. Any forge planet is covered in manufactorums and mines. It is, in essence, a planetary factory. Tech priests call humans work units and treat them accordingly, impersonally. Before a worker becomes incapacitated, they are often sent to become servitors, that is, turned into a techno-slave. They are lobotomized, deprived of will, robotized, and sent to perform primitive functions such as hauling crates or operating doors. Consider this before petitioning for respite. Should you fail in production and ruin a quota, to the servitors. Commit a crime, to the servitors. It is simple. However, it is worth noting that a living person is considered a superior servant, so they will not be lobotomized without a compelling reason. Can a laborer become a tech priest? A pertinent question. Yes. Otherwise, how would they replenish their ranks? Any person who has shown promise in communing with the machine has the opportunity to obtain the rank of a keeper of knowledge. Work diligently, demonstrate intellect, and you will be noticed. The rest await the fate of a worker bee until death. If the forge world is a monument to industry, the penal world is a monument to sin and retribution. There are crimes against the Imperium so vast, or populations so rebellious, that death is considered too lenient a mercy. Thus, the penal legions and penal worlds are born. A penal world is a prison the size of a planet. These are often toxic wastelands, radioactive moons, or worlds with climates so hostile they were deemed unfit for colonization. Here, the condemned are sent not to live, but to die slowly while serving the Emperor. There are no cells here, for there is nowhere to run. The atmosphere itself is the warden. Convicts are fitted with explosive collars or chem injectors. Disobedience results in summary detonation. They toil in mines, digging for hazardous materials with their bare hands, or clear minefields by walking through them. Consider the Savla chemdogs, regiments raised from such hells. They fight with the ferocity of those who have nothing to lose, hoping to steal a few more hours of life. On a penal world, labor is not a livelihood. It is a form of execution that takes years to complete. The philosophy is absolute. You have sinned against the master of mankind. Only through suffering can you balance the ledger. Only in death does duty end. Cardinal worlds. From the depths of sin, we look to the heights of faith. The cardinal worlds, or shrine worlds, are planets dedicated entirely to the worship of the God Emperor. These are the domains of the ecclesiarchy. Imagine a world where every mountain has been carved into a statue of a saint, where continents are covered in cathedrals so large that clouds form within their naves. There is no industry here save the industry of faith. The population exists solely to serve the priesthood and the pilgrims. And the pilgrims come in their billions. They spend decades traveling across the stars, selling all they own for a single ticket on a transport, merely to touch the hem of a saint's robe or kneel before a reliquary. Many die in the crush of the crowds, their bodies adding to the foundations of the temples. Here, the wealth of the Ministorum is displayed in gold and marble, contrasting sharply with the poverty of the faithful. Yet it is also a place of martial strength. The orders militant of the Adepta Sororitas, the Sisters of Battle, often guard these sanctuaries. Orphanages, the Schola Progenium, raise the children of fallen heroes to be stormtroopers or commissars. On a cardinal world, the air is thick with incense, and the sound of chanting never ceases. It is a reminder that the Imperium is kept alive not just by laser guns, but by the fanatical, unyielding belief in the Emperor's divinity. Feudal worlds. The absurdity on feudal planets is staggering. In a universe of void travel and power armor, the majority of the population use pack animals, dwell in hovels, and march to war with swords. Not chainsword, citizen, but simple steel blades. Feudal worlds also differ greatly from one another. On some, livestock might be grown in gene vats. On others, beasts possess augmentations. It is not uncommon for clay houses to be connected to portals, for plasma reactor conduits to pass through them, or for such huts to be constructed around an orbital missile silo. Swords and halberds might be supplemented with modern pistols or discharge electrical payloads. Some worlds manage to escape the Dark Ages and become a civilized world. But in most, the population is intentionally kept in ignorance by the ruling classes. This is to keep the serfs in check. The planetary governor and his court nobility may utilize all advantages of modern technology and dine well, while the populace survives by digging in the mud. It is a strange amalgamation of vast farmlands, green hills and forests, with factories spewing smog and spaceports. If you surmise that such worlds are of no value to humanity, you are mistaken. Unique conditions sometimes lead to the creation of the greatest and most valuable regiments of the Astra Militarum. A striking example is the Attilan Rough Riders, who have repeatedly demonstrated the might of their cavalry on the field, their hunting lances piercing even the necrodermis of the Necron armies. On feudal worlds, kinship and respect for family values are developed like nowhere else. The people are conservative and loath to leave their homes. Titles and power are hereditary, and the hierarchy is rigid. Therefore, a feature of medieval planets is unconditional loyalty. Residents express devotion through tithes. A count or duke respects his suzerain and obeys him, who in turn protects his subjects. Rebellions rarely erupt here, thus the tax flow is stable. Feudal worlds are backward but structured. Feral worlds are wild and even more regressed. Here, development has halted at the tribal stage. The populace lives in ignorance, unaware of the greater cosmos. Though occasionally, barbarian worlds become accustomed to sky ships, mistaking them for gods, or offering battle to the Astartes. Feral worlds are valued by the Imperium exclusively for human resources. The population is incredibly strong. Cut off from the Imperium, they worshipped their own idols, which the ecclesiarchy exploited. Missionaries replaced local totems with the emperor. Thus, a lord of the skies became another aspect of the master of mankind. Living in shacks and rejecting progress, savages nevertheless serve the Imperium. Almost always, they are ruled by an educated governor who knows how to manipulate the tribes to ensure the tithe. Furthermore, religious barbarians make excellent zealots, fanatical warriors who fear no death. The ecclesiarchy and the Inquisition frequently recruit such fervent tribesmen. Abhumans and the mutant. We have spoken of the standard human, yet the galaxy has twisted the genome of many. The Imperium preaches the purity of the human form, 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head. To deviate is to invite suspicion. Yet, the administratum is pragmatic. There are those whose stable mutations are deemed useful, classified as abhumans. Consider the Ogrin, massive dim-witted brutes originating from high-gravity prison worlds. They possess the strength of 5 men, but the intellect of a child. They are used as heavy labor or shock troops, their loyalty secured by simple promises of extra rations. Or the Rattlings, small, dexterous and light-fingered, serving as snipers and cooks, though tolerated with a sneer. Then there are the Navigators, the Homo Navigo. Without their third eye to perceive the currents of the warp, our fleets would be blind. They are wealthy and powerful, yet they are mutants nonetheless, hidden away in their spires, feared by the common man. But for every sanctioned abhuman, there are 1,000 twisted wretches, the mutant, the deviant, the twist. In the underhives, those born with scales, extra limbs, or strange eyes are shunned. They are the outcasts, often driven into the arms of rebellion or chaos not by choice, but by the hatred of their kin. Remember, citizen, the mutant bears the mark of damnation on his flesh. Pity him not, for his form is an insult to the Emperor's image. Fortress Worlds. We speak of production, of faith, of primitive struggle, but there are worlds whose sole purpose is war itself. These are not planets, they are redoubts on a galactic scale. While other worlds pay tithes in grain or ore, the fortress world pays in blood. Imagine a planet where every mountain has been hollowed out into a bunker, every valley is a kill zone, and every highway is a trench line. There are no civilians here, there is only the reserve and the front. From the moment a child can walk, they are taught the liturgy of the lasgun. By the age of 10, they can strip and reassemble a bolter blindfolded. Consider Cadia. Though it has fallen, its spirit remains the eternal template. The planet broke before the guard did. On such worlds, the birth rate is synonymous with the reinforcement rate. To be born, there is to be a soldier. Life here is a cycle of drills, shelling, and waiting for the invasion. The sky is often choked with smoke or the shimmer of void shields. Why exist in such a purgatory? Because without these worlds, the soft underbelly of the Imperium, the Hive worlds and Agri worlds, would be devoured. They are the shield that must not fracture. You do not work for a living here, citizen. You fight for existence. Death worlds. We have discussed worlds where life is hard. But in the galaxy, there are worlds where life is impossible even by our standards. Dangerous worlds, unbearable worlds, death worlds. What you call hell, they call home. A death world is a class of planets considered too hostile for human life due to geophysical, climatic, or biological reasons. However, obstacles do not halt the Imperium. Are there resources? Then we shall extract them at any cost. Colossal deposits of adamantium will attract the Adeptus Mechanicus, regardless of volcanic surfaces. Radiation storms may scour settlements, yet the people will remain, for reasons classified by the Inquisition. Often, worlds are settled where the fauna acts as an immune system, treating humanity as an infection. Impenetrable jungles and toxic swamps seek to liquidate the settlers. A prime example is the famous Catachan or Pyrrhus, where people exist in constant combat with poisonous vegetation and build fortress settlements. Yet even their walls are corroded by acidic vines. The war with nature is eternal. Life on death worlds is so harsh that reaching adulthood is a feat. The weak perish, but what warriors are produced for the Astra Militarum. Survival is their existence. Many Space Marine chapters prize recruits from death worlds. Such enduring candidates are most likely to survive the implantation. Society here is cohesive. Everyone knows their duty. Punishment for failure is severe, and every human resource is utilized. Even the maimed find use, be it in the kitchen or the medici. Life is short. Thus, despite cohesion, personal attachment is non-existent. All await the end. Yet, talented survivors often rise to high ranks in the Adeptus Arbites or Administratum, for their pragmatism and will are unbreakable. Even on safe worlds, people work themselves to death, choke on corpse bars, or consume refuse. We have not described mining worlds which are hollowed-out tombs, nor civilized worlds where bureaucracy stifles the soul. Medicine and education depend on the planet. On civilized worlds, institutes exist. On feudal worlds, there is only superstition. The rich buy life, the poor die. The Adeptus Sororitas may offer healing to the wretched, but they are few. The Adeptus Arbites serve as guardians of the Lex. They are stern and empowered. The law exists, but the probability of summary execution or rotting in a cell is high. It is common for a man to die while waiting 70 years for a scribe to find the correct clause in the Lex Imperialis, books of law written over 10,000 years. What is the conclusion, citizen? The ordinary worker should not expect a life of comfort, learning, or health. Most likely he will die in the fields, in the manufactorum, or be devoured by flora. And if not, he will break from exhaustion. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only labor, and it grinds all to dust for the glory of the Emperor.